Greetings, fellow Earthlings. My name is Zach,
And I'm Jessica.
and this is
High Level Hairesy.
Question everything. Without the question, how can you have the answer? Wisdom comes from within. This is High Level Hairesy.
If I am guilty of anything, it is of believing what God said about children. Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. In no way do I think that I am God, but I do try to be God-like in my heart. I am totally innocent of any wrongdoing, and I know these terrible allegations will all be proven false. Again, to my friends and fans, thank you very much for all of your support. Together, we will see this through to the very end. I love you very much, and may God bless you all. I love you. Goodbye.
Today we're diving into one of the most polarizing stories in modern pop culture. Michael Jackson, his allegations, his acquittal, the media machine, and the internet's favorite genre, the death hoax.
Here's our rule. We're separating court facts, media narratives, and speculation. Because if we blur those, we become the very thing we're trying to critique. However, I will say that we do have some pretty personal, specific opinions, and we will share those based on some of the information that we bring you today. So join us as we ask the question, did Michael Jackson escape the allegations, the innocence, and the death hoax? But before we get started, we're going to take our breath together so we can get on the same wavelength and you can ground down into this space as you're listening. I will say inhale, that will be your 1. Count us through 2, 3, 4. We'll hold for 2 and then sigh it out. So here we go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful job. Beautiful job.
Thank you.
All right. So everyone knows who Michael Jackson is. We are big fans in this household. Our son, his all-time favorite artist is MJ. He's loved him since he was a tiny child. He owns all of his albums, like vinyl. He has a switch plate that he got for Christmas, a light switch plate that has Michael Jackson's album cover. And I remember once he said to me, I don't know if you know the band DC Talk, a big Christian group that we grew up with, Zach and I, but he said, I wish that Michael Jackson and DC Talk could have done a song together. And I said, yeah, that would have been cool. And he was like, I just know he was a Christian. And I was like, oh, he goes, you just know that he loved God. And I just thought as a child to notice something like that.
He picked up on that.
He picked up on essentially Jackson's childlike heart and innocence. And so, Zach, let's talk about his statistics so you can just remember how big the king of pop actually was.
Yeah, let's give you a little refresher. We all know who he is, but let me just refresh your memory on how massive he was. So he wasn't just successful, like he was bigger than life, really. So quickly, he sold an estimated 400 to 500 million records worldwide. That placed him among the top-selling music artists in human history, not pop history, human history. His 1982 album Thriller remains, to this day, the best-selling album of all time. It was certified 34 times platinum in the U.S. alone by the Recording Industry Association of America. Globally, estimates exceed 70 million copies. That's one album. That's more than the population of many countries. Thriller spent 37 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200, which is over half a year at number 1. It stayed on the charts for over 500 weeks. That's almost a decade of chart presence.
Damn.
He won 13 Grammy Awards, including a record-breaking 8 Grammys in one night for Thriller. That tied a record that stood for decades up until that point. He has 26 American Music Awards, more than any male artist in history. To this day, still. He earned 39 Guinness World Records, including most successful entertainer of all time. The Bad album produced 5 number 1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. That was the first album to ever do that. The Bad World Tour grossed about $125 million in the late 1980s and drew roughly 4.4 million people. Adjusted for inflation, that's well over $300 million today. The Dangerous World Tour pulled in about 3.5 million attendees, and the History World Tour, another 4.5 million. In 1993, his Super Bowl halftime performance, which was Super Bowl 27, changed live television. Viewership increased during halftime for the first time in Super Bowl history. So networks realized halftime could be an event, not just a bathroom break. So for those who don't know, everybody that watches the Super Bowl, we all, a lot of people will only watch it for the commercials because they're big time commercials and all that kind of stuff, or the game itself. Prior to Michael Jackson's 1993 performance, it was mostly just like marching bands and stuff. It'd be like a college game. It was just marching bands. It wasn't really a big fanfare. So the whole Super Bowl halftime show thing started because of Michael. We'll get more into this later, but, obviously owned publishing rights with Sony and ATV catalog. We'll get more into that. His music videos were the first of their kind. They were short films. They were not just music videos.
Right.
He had Martin Scorsese, the famous director, directed a lot of his videos. Thriller ran nearly 14 minutes, and it permanently altered MTV programming. And then at the time of his death in 2009, supposed death, he became the highest earning deceased celebrity multiple years in a row, generating over $2 billion posthumously through music, Cirque du Soleil shows, filming, and licensing. He was also the first black artist in heavy rotation on MTV, so he helped dismantle racial barriers in mainstream pop television. He influenced choreography, fashion, music production, global touring logistics, all simultaneously. The moonwalk wasn't necessarily invented by him, but he branded it so hard the move now belongs to him in collective memory.
Absolutely.
He took a lot of cues from James Brown. If you look at a lot of his moves, he grew up listening to and watching James Brown, so he took a lot of his moves. But obviously, you say moonwalk, and immediately you think Michael Jackson. So that just a few nice little facts and figures about him that really just remind you of how massive he was
and how influential. And when someone holds that much influence in the world, when, as we've talked about in other episodes, there are people that are, pulling the strings and creating narratives. And when you have someone that's singing things like they don't care about us and heal the world, make it a better place, when you are trying to keep people more fear-based, I think he was kind of coming against the establishment in a lot of areas. And so, like we said, he was acquitted in 2005 for the allegations made against him, about messing with kids. The families that were coming against him actually stopped cooperating. And even though he was acquitted, there's still many people, there's been, there's been later allegations of people coming forward as adults saying, oh, actually, when I was testifying in court, I lied. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But
pretty almost all of them did, if not the main ones. Those
Well, there was a
kids.
couple
There was a
that
couple.
said that it happened, and then there were a few that said no, he would never do that. And then they came out later, more recently,
After he died,
after he
when he
passed,
couldn't defend himself.
and then started creating allegations, and then created a documentary.
Mhm.
But like I said, well, that's a little later on. So why, is this continue to go? And I think a lot of it has to do with that scandal is a business model, and that creates ratings, and repetition becomes common knowledge. So then you repeat and you repeat and you repeat, and then that becomes what everybody knows. A lot of people I've talked to and brought up that we believe that Michael Jackson did fake his death, and we will give you a lot of juicy information that might make you believe as well, that
Including some direct quotes from Michael.
And when someone is so vastly well known, like he would go to other countries, and like tribal folk would know who he was. People that did not have like an in with the world goings on, they knew who he was. And then there would be areas that he would go that had high crime, high violence. And while he was there, those things would subside. Like there was a lot of gang activity, and it would kind of cease. He brought peace. And I think just his nature, just who he was, and we have a couple clips that we're going to play that show often in interviews he brought up trying to be godlike and trying to be like Jesus.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm on a tangent.
I was just going to add to what you were saying about the way that not only how many people knew everybody, even down to tribes in the Amazon, knew who he was, but the "They Don't Care About Us" video, though he actually did two versions of that, and one of them he did in Brazil. And if you haven't watched that, it's such an awesome video. You should go watch it. So there's a lot of issues down there in Rio favela, but the authorities, he wanted to film it there with local people, the local Brazilians there, but the authorities couldn't guarantee his safety because of cartels and gangs and all that kind of stuff. Well, they basically shut down operations for a few days while he did this. One of the local drug lords who controlled the entire area was a fan of his and stepped in, ordered his gang to protect Jackson at all costs and ensure that the music video shoot went smoothly. So they shut down operations basically for a few days, and on top of it, ordered their guys to protect Jackson and his crew so that there weren't any rival gangs or anything like that coming in on him. So he was a man of the people. The people loved him. It wasn't the people that smeared him. It was the powers that be that smeared him. The people loved him. And that's another thing too. Look back at the people. A lot of people loved Jesus, and it was the powers that be that didn't like the power that he held because of the love of the people.
Jesus was coming against the establishment.
And that's exactly what Michael was doing. And it's just a nice little comparison. But yeah, just a fun little factoid about that music video.
So you mentioned smear him, and let's talk about that. Like why? Because there's some details that people don't know regarding, why there are a lot of instances where you see like when a celebrity is about to come forward, and then all of a sudden they, like we call it, they are suicided. Supposedly they commit suicide.
Unalived.
But then, there's a lot of interesting and missing facts surrounding their death. So let's talk about how MJ's power with like his publishing rights and like that. So he, in 1985, Michael Jackson bought the ATV
ATV Music Publishing.
Music Publishing for $47.5 million and owned that. And then joined with Sony, a joint venture formed in 1995 after Sony offered money for a 50% stake in the venture. And they became the world's largest music publisher. So give us, like, name some of the artists that MJ had controlling powers over.
Yep. So the ATV Music Publishing was the original one. And then, like she said, later they merged with Sony. So just to give you an idea of who those artists that were part of that, the Beatles, their entire catalog, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Queen, Carole King, Joni Mitchell, Stevie Wonder, the Rolling Stones, Hank Williams, Roy Orbison, Marvin Gaye, Sting. I mean, the list goes on. You know, he and that's a massive amount of power to hold.
So if you want a non-mystical reason, powerful people might dislike you, control a fortune in publishing. And, you know, one individual can keep you from making any other decisions. That alone might be a reason that they would have issue. Then They Don't Care About Us. That came out in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And the song became controversial specifically over the lyrics, and they were widely criticized as anti-Semitic. And Jackson said his intent was anti-prejudice and did issue apologies and edits, which I don't know if did he issue edits or did they just cover it
I don't
up?
think he edited.
Yeah,
that
I think
was,
they just blocked
like,
it,
when
blacked it out.
There were certain terms and phrases in that song that when you listen to it on any platform, it's not a bleep. It's like a noise that happens. It's like a crashing sound in these specific words that he uses. And they weren't cuss words. They were
derogatory terms.
But I don't think he edited those, because for a long time, I think they did.
Right. And he said, I'm being misunderstood. And so he positions himself as a protest artist, which they don't like being protested against.
Mm-mm.
And he also stepped on a cultural landmine at that time when he did that. So he faced a lot of public criticism about that, and with specifically Jewish groups. And we're just calling out industry exploitation is valid. And we're not saying one thing or another regarding what that dispute was about. But that was another reason that he was disliked in the industry.
Right.
All right. The allegations and some of Neverland Ranch. And let's talk about some of that. You've seen, just from a few brief things, his influence, his publishing power and control in the music industry. So you have already, just with your words and your lyrics and who you are, that power, and then you combine the financial power and the ownership, and then it's like, okay, well, what can we do to take this man down? Because, we have to smear his name. So the allegations that he molested children.
So I think the allegations started in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. 1993 is when they started. So he obviously denied any wrongdoing,
which
over and over again.
Played that clip for you in the beginning. We opened with that so you could. And the thing is that the people that knew him
knew that
he had people like Whoopi Goldberg and Macaulay Culkin who knew him, who they had been friends. And Culkin mentions in an interview he loved being around children because they didn't act like he was anybody special. They didn't recognize him as a celebrity, as someone who had power. they treated him like a normal
Like
human
an
being,
equal.
like an equal.
And he's lived his entire life not being treated as equal.
And
he was always put on a pedestal from the time he was a child.
From the time he was a child, and lost a normal childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and then had trauma in his childhood. So it would make sense that some of his emotional state would then just kind of vibe with the innocence of a child. And so with Neverland Ranch, his main goal was to bring joy to kids. He couldn't leave his place. Like, he had a fake grocery store set up, hired actors so he could pretend.
Right. It was a real grocery store, but he hired all these people that he knew.
Real grocery store.
It was a real grocery store, but basically he
Cleared
rented
it out
for a day or something, and he hired people he knew, friends and family and stuff, to walk around acting as if they were shopping so that he could actually just feel normal for a few minutes. And he was joyfully, if you look at the footage, that you can find this footage online, he was like joyful just walking through the aisles with a grocery cart and picking out stuff, because he wasn't able to do that. People don't think about that a lot with really any star, but especially Michael Jackson. Like, you can't, once you become famous like that, your normal life is over. You can't just go out in public, and you can, but you're going to get bombarded by either fans or paparazzi, and you're not going to be able to just you can't just be like, man, I want to go to Starbucks real quick and go grab a coffee. Nope.
Everybody wants a piece of you.
Yeah. And he paid money to be able to have a normal existence, or to at least try to experience that. And he didn't get that. He's never had that his entire life. So not only Neverland Ranch was not only for him, but it was for children that he wanted to bring joy to. So not only was he bringing joy to kids, and mind you, a lot of these kids were sick. Not all of them, but he paid special attention to sick kids, leukemia patients, cancer patients, various different, kids with different diseases or terminal illnesses, to essentially be like a living Make-A-Wish Foundation, like a human Make-A-Wish Foundation. He had
the Heal the World Foundation, or charity, that he had set up for children, and traveled globally to help kids in need. And also, aside from, with the sick kids, he had medical beds set up so that they could come, and they could have their IVs. These were terminally ill and kids that he would make sure they had what they needed medically, especially while they were there. But then he would have the latest movies on screens that they could watch, and he would have magic shows for them, so that he, like you said, a Make-A-Wish Foundation on his own, because he had the means to do it and he had the heart. And then the other children that he invited were also celebrity children,
like Macaulay Culkin, and his brother Kieran,
who had also couldn't go out and live a normal life. So they wouldn't be able to just go to an amusement park and ride rides without being bombarded,
or rent the entire park out.
But coming there. And so some of this information that we're pulling out came from a documentary from Hibbler Productions called Finding Neverland, where shout out to Sean Hibbler if you're listening. We love you, man. They go in on the two gentlemen what are the names of those guys? Can you get, because I don't remember. We watched it a few times and I don't remember what those chaps, not that it really matters, but the initial first child, Jordan Chandler, hang on, before you bring those guys up, we'll come back to their names. The first lad, Jordan Chandler, that came forward with allegations against MJ. There are phone calls with his father that specifically were talking about money, and that he would be able to do whatever he wanted because of the money he would receive. And then fast forward to 2009, Chandler admits that he lied and his father committed suicide. So, I mean, there could be any number of reasons, but it does lend to potential guilt or embarrassment when his son came forward that there were lies and that it never actually happened. And then the second child, Gavin Arvizo. Arvizo, thank you. There was actually zero evidence in the case that anything had happened. And there is footage of that family prior to the allegations. There's footage of the family saying how the doctors had told Gavin that there was nothing that they could do for his cancer, that he really there was nothing else that could happen. And so Michael ended up giving him hope, lifting him up, paying for a lot of his treatments, and then he survived. And his family is sitting there talking about how they called him Daddy Michael.
Right. And
then they also bring up the fact that, like, with everyone, there's people saying, oh, well, they stayed in his bedroom. His bedroom was like an apartment.
Massive. It was massive.
It had a second floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the mother said, I was there. Like, the parents were there. Parents didn't just, as a parent, would you just drop your kid off somewhere anyway and be like, oh, you're going to go hang out with Michael Jackson? Maybe, but I'd want to also be there. And most of the parents that did were there. And especially these children, a lot of them were ill. So you would stay by your child's side. So
Gavin and his family, he was a cancer patient. And like you said, Michael was paying for a lot of his treatments, all that kind of stuff. So the Gavin and his brother testified, and they said that Jackson gave them alcohol, showed them pornography, masturbated before them, and made sexual advances. First off, Michael didn't drink. Michael was not a drinker. He was a self-professed, he didn't drink, he didn't do any drugs, none of that kind of stuff. But that just sounds, and I guess this is just my own personal thing, but when you say that out loud, I'm like, none of those things sound like Michael at all.
And that's the family that later then quit cooperating.
Right.
So because they came out later, they said, no, he would never do anything like that. Then they came out later within that time frame, and they said, they suddenly decided that he had done something and made those accusations. And
the defense characterized them as disgruntled, either ex-employees or individuals seeking to exploit Jackson for money.
And it's all about the Benjamins. It's about the money. Anytime dollar signs are flashed and there's an opportunity, people lose their mind and they don't actually think about what they're doing. And it's really heartbreaking, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward, and after Michael's passing, a couple of the kids that said no, they testified for Michael and said he never has touched me. He never would. He's amazing. He's my friend. And
that was Wade Robinson and James Safechuck. So they were both in that 2019 documentary, Leaving Neverland.
Mm-hmm.
They both alleged that Michael Jackson sexually abused them as children in the 90s after previously testifying in Michael's defense during the original investigations. They testified in defense of Michael, saying, nope, he would never do anything like that. Wade Robinson was a choreographer who testified for the defense in the 2005 trial, stating he was not molested, but then later filed a lawsuit in 2013, 4 years after Michael died, alleging years of abuse. James Safechuck was the other guy. He was an actor who testified as a child in 1993 that he was not abused, but later alleged abuse in a lawsuit that, along with Wade Robinson's, had faced various legal rulings and appeals.
And they ended up with Safechuck once he heard about Wade's allegations, jumped on the bandwagon, got the same attorney, and then, went forward. And it was also discovered that Wade actually had financial troubles. So what better of way? And then, that was perjury that in court that he said, so you lied and stood up for someone when, the opportunity for the money would have been there then, but it wasn't until you needed it. And MJ couldn't defend himself that you came forward with this information, because you can blame it on, loss of memory, or you were, you just didn't know what to do because you were a child. But I'm pretty certain that as a child, you are going to tell the truth a lot more so than when you're in financial trouble as an adult.
Right, because those things aren't on your mind as a child. You're not thinking about those things. And I also just want to add this to what we said earlier about just him being acquitted and all that kind of stuff. That does, because I understand with legalese and all that stuff, like there's a difference between settling, acquitted, all those things. So with that, in 1994, Jackson settled that initial lawsuit from Jordan Chandler,
which was the one whose dad wanted him to get the monies.
To get the money, exactly. So in January of 94, Jackson settled that lawsuit for $23 million, with $5 million of that going to the family's lawyers. The settlement was not an admission of guilt. Jackson said he had settled to prevent the lawsuit from interfering with his career, which he later said he regretted doing that.
Yeah.
He wished that he hadn't settled. He did it just for his own good.
Yeah, because sometimes you just got to throw money at a problem.
Right. And sometimes it's just easy because, with this court kind of stuff, and we know a lot about court stuff, that can just be dragged on and on and on. And the longer it goes on, the more money is going to be drained out of your bank account. So I get why he said that. So prosecutors pursued the criminal case and presented the evidence to two separate grand juries, neither of which indicted him.
Ahoy, matey. Has your style ship sailed? Are you looking for direction? Point your sails toward High Level Design Salon and Barbershop in Pendleton, Indiana. Whether you're looking for a custom color or a swashbuckling fade, Zach and Jessica will help you find your treasure. For booking info, visit highlevel444.com. I wish you fair winds and following seas. Farewell, matey.
So just in case there's anyone out there that still questions MJ's innocence, this is for you, so that maybe you're not listening to his music anymore because you just weren't sure. And maybe you just don't even care, but you're doing yourself a disservice by not continuing to invite his wonderful music into your life. And like I said, I just resonate with him on so many levels. One of his songs in the album that came out, Xscape, after he passed, Slave to the Rhythm. And he talks about being a slave to the rhythm of love. And man, I just encourage you to go listen to that song, because I think a lot of people can resonate with you do things and you essentially are a slave to love, because you have to keep doing these things for the people you care about. And I digress. He holds such a special place in my heart. And actually, today is my birthday. And so to get to
Happy birthday.
to get to record our MJ episode that we've been very excited since before we recorded any of them to record, it just seems extra special because it's also my B-Day. So okay, so like I said earlier, there's a lot of people that don't know that there's just a circulation or, quote, conspiracy that MJ faked his death. And this documentary we watched, it's on a channel called Believe. And this documentary was based on a 10-year investigation of all the facts that could be dug up. And interviews with the family, slip ups, which we're going to just run through a list of some of the things that really make it seem like that point to someone that was so huge. Okay, so like, why would he fake his death? Like, we'll talk about that. But there was an interview with Rabbi Shmuley that I'm going to have Zach read. We wanted to play a clip, but it's a little bit hard to hear. The audio wouldn't be great. So read that.
So Rabbi Shmuley has also been in the news about a lot recently with the goings on in Israel and all that stuff. But years ago, Michael Jackson considered him one of his spiritual guides. So in around 2001, Michael Jackson sat down with Rabbi Shmuley Boteach to record what turned out to be the most intimate and revealing conversations of his life. It was Michael's wish to bare his soul and unburden himself to a public that he knew was deeply suspicious of him. However, Rabbi Shmuley lost all contact with Michael in the following years. Michael specifically distanced himself from Rabbi due to the Rabbi's assumptions and negativity about various things in Michael's life. On September 25th, 2009, Rabbi Shmuley published a book that was based on these tape recordings. But the book was a huge disappointment since his negative and ignorant commentary completely destroyed the whole purpose of the book, which was to showcase Michael's point of view. So you can go listen to a lot of these recordings. You can literally pull it up on YouTube. If you type in Michael Jackson's private tape recordings, you'll find this information. So you can watch even more and listen to even more. So I'm going to quote a very small portion of this before we really go into the death hoax. And this is verbatim, by the way. So Rabbi Shmuley, I will say, he started off asking about the Beatles. He asked Michael, do you think the Beatles got so big because they broke up? It's kind of the idea of like, you become a legend after you die, like Tupac or whoever. So that's kind of just preface for this little bit of the conversation. Rabbi Shmuley said, so is that an argument, Michael, for you to say one day, that's it? Michael's response, quote, yeah, I would like to, in some kind of way, disappear where people don't see me anymore at some point and just do my thing for children, but not be visual. To disappear is very important. That was straight from this recording with Rabbi Shmuley. So that's a very good way to preface this whole half of the conversation about the death hoax, is straight from Michael's mouth. To disappear is very important.
So, okay. Then later I will read you lyrics from his album Xscape. And it's that just the title alone. And if you really dig into Michael's life, you will see that he did nothing by accident. And he had so many read between the lines moments. He had little hints and throwbacks and things that if you're paying attention, you'll grab it. And so the album Xscape that came out after his death, X means death. And then scape, you look it up, that suffix means denoting a specific type of scene. And so we're looking at Xscape, death scene. And then you look at how his music videos were productions. He was a producer, and one of his big visions was to be a director. And he did direct a lot of his videos, and he was a master of disguise in a lot of his music videos. he played roles. You couldn't even tell that it was him. One, he was a heavyset white man that was a mayor, and that character, actually, we'll talk about that later, that comes out in a couple scenes where he's just out and about in everyday affairs. And
which ties back to what we were saying earlier about how he did that thing with the grocery store. He would also do it, like intricate disguises, not just putting on some glasses and a beard, like movie production level
special effects, prosthetics,
prosthetic, all of that stuff, just so he could go out in public. Or if he wanted to attend certain events or something like that, maybe something with his family but he didn't want to be the center of attention, he would do that kind of thing.
And then another little interesting tidbit was that he actually was married to Lisa Marie Presley, whose father, Elvis, also had been said to faked his own death. And now I've never really researched that and gone in. I've never seen evidence that can point to that, nor was Elvis someone that really dressed in disguise. But Michael, if anyone could fake his own death, that had the means, that had the entourage, that had the support, and that had the mindset, and had already specifically said, like, I need to disappear at some point, and had reason to disappear, it's Michael. Then in 1994, just a little fun fact, there was a psychic, and we're talking all the way back in 94, a psychic that said MJ would fake his death like Elvis. It's just kind of an interesting little tidbit. So, okay, let's talk about the actual facts surrounding his death.
Right. The official story.
The official story.
All right. You want to go or do you want me to go?
Okay, well, Jackson died June 25th, 2009.
I remember the day it happened.
I do too. I was working. I was in my salon and I cried.
I was at church camp. I remember the morning that day, everybody was talking about it at church camp, and there was kind of a pall over that day. Even at church camp. Even at church camp, everybody realized the gravity of what had just happened. Everybody was talking about it all day. Like, oh my God, did you hear Michael Jackson is dead? And it was just, God, it was such a loss.
Yeah. And so the cause was
the official cause.
The official cause, if we say official, the narrative, the story was acute propofol intoxication. And it was, so initially you had mentioned to me that the defense had initially said that Michael was the one that gave himself that fatal dose. But then
I think
later,
it was Murray's defense said that, I believe.
Okay. So then later, Conrad Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in 2011. But okay.
I want to clear this up just because we can't assume that everybody knows what it is. Propofol was a surgical anesthetic.
Okay. Yeah.
Michael was not a drug addict. He wasn't a drinker. He was never a smoker. He was never a drug addict. So this wasn't a situation where like he was just doing drugs. You have to understand, Michael, his life was extremely stressful because of the level of fame he was at, the level of perfection that he demanded of himself and demanded of his band, his crew, everybody. He had, if you go watch the This Is It documentary, that documentary is wonderful because it really shows you Michael and how
he spoke to his
the way
people.
He spoke to his people. He was very loving.
He prayed before shows.
Yes. And it shows you the level of detail. Like, think of it on the level of like restaurants. A Michelin star restaurant, the level of detail that they have is down to every single, like the plating, the tablecloths being ironed, like every little. That's how Michael was with his show, with his music. He had a hand in every single aspect of his show. He didn't just leave it to the choreographers and the directors to just, he showed up and, okay, here's what I'm going to do. He had, so I say all that to say he lived a very stressful life. He had huge problems with sleeping, not to mention his touring schedule and how often he was all around the world during touring. That can mess up your entire circadian rhythm and your sleep schedule, all that stuff. So what I was saying is that propofol was something, it was a set. Technically, it was being improperly used as a bedtime sleep agent. That's not what it was made for. It was made for as a surgical anesthetic, but that was the level that he needed that. I'm sure he tried sleeping pills, and I bet you it didn't work.
Well,
so just so people know what propofol was.
So, okay. Why would Conrad Murray be part of his escape plan? Like, why would you agree to spend a couple years in jail in order to, go along with this plan? So that we did a little digging and we found some interesting things. Aside from the fact that he didn't actually go to a prison, he spent 2 years out of his 4 years in a local jail.
Los Angeles County Jail.
A county jail instead of a prison. And then, Zach, give us the details of his, like, the money he owed and all the things.
So Conrad Murray, well, like she said, now this was due to California's, this was due to the California's Realignment Act of 2011, which was designed to reduce prison overcrowding. He served his sentence in a local facility at Los Angeles County Jail rather than a state prison. He also only served 2 years of a 4-year sentence, which I think 4 years is quite a lenient sentence for
very
manslaughter.
Lenient for manslaughter, yes.
Like, come on, man. But anyways, so he only served 2 years. He was in a jail, not a prison. So as far as his personal life and his money issues,
streamline it.
Reportedly he fathered 7 children by 6 different women. He was in arrears on the mortgage for his Las Vegas home that was occupied by his first wife and children, and owed child support to the mothers of children outside of his marriage, which he was not able to pay due to the amount of money that he owed to Michael Jackson's family. So he owed them money. He was married to Blanche, which was his second wife, whom he met at a medical school. And then he also helped pay rent for another woman named Nicole Alvarez. Side note, he met Alvarez at a gentleman's club in Las Vegas when she worked as a stripper, and then later she gave birth to their son in March of 2009, which was right before Michael died. He was also in another relationship with a cocktail waitress from Houston, so
he had a lot of baby mamas.
He was kind of sleazy. I mean, that's
judgmental.
That's judgmental, but he was a little bit of
word,
okay. But I'm just saying,
we're just presenting facts.
Yes,
not judgment.
He was also at risk of losing his California medical license due to unpaid child support to one of his children. He also owed $13,000 to a California woman named Nanita Malibarian. He was a defendant in numerous civil lawsuits. By 2008, he had accumulated over $600,000 in court judgments against him for medical equipment and unpaid rent for his practices in Texas and Nevada. He also owed $71,000 for unpaid student loans at the medical college, and he also filed for bankruptcy in 2002.
So, okay, that's quite a rap sheet and a lot of money to owe. And then also bringing up the fact that he owed money to Jackson's family. So we don't even know what that's about, but that's a lot of money. So if somebody said, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to help corroborate my story and add another level of detail to make it believable. And we're talking a movie production here. Okay. Like, hey, go to jail for 2 years. Not prison, just go sit in a jail, and your debt you can't be called on your debt, and you can't be harassed by anyone. And maybe that debt gets wiped out because Maybe he was offered money to do it. Like look at all the facts surrounding. And because he did go and spend some time, but 2 measly years for involuntary manslaughter. And then you look at, like we said, the facts surrounding it, and it looks a little sus. So then there was some information about like those court proceedings. It was closed. Media was not allowed inside. So what the media had was hand fed them. So we don't know. And then there's some information, like some video leakage that is on one of these documentaries that, okay, the state flag behind the judge that's in every courtroom, the seal, the state seal on that flag, something was askew on that. And that's just not something that's going to happen when it's kind of an important detail in a courtroom.
It was the California state seal. There are 31 stars on the state seal. I believe there was only 29 or 30 or something like that. It was not the
just
correct amount.
Slightly
off because it wasn't official. It wasn't real. So, and it to speak to what we were talking about earlier, to add to this, he was all about production. His music videos were short films, essentially. He, even in the, what's the video? He was, woman from Iberia, or Iberian woman. Liberian woman. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He portrays himself as a director in that video.
At the end of that video.
At the end of that video, he portrays himself as sitting behind the camera. So you take all of those facts, and then because look, guys, we understand how crazy this sounds, that he would fake his death, that it would be a whole production. But like Jessica said earlier, if anybody could pull this off, it would be Michael.
And once you hear a little bit more detail, you might not question it either. So, okay, so we have talked about, why Conrad Murray. Oh, and then there's an interview with Dr. Oz where Dr. Murray specifically says to Dr. Oz, I was in the room, I left for about 25 minutes, and I came back, and that was not the same body, and it was in a different position. So, I mean, the fact that that interview was even able to be aired, like, boggles my mind, and that there's not more information on that. But there was a snippet of that interview, which is within this documentary, which I forgot to mention the name of it. It is Michael Jackson Alive in 2025. And this is the one that we're talking about. There was a 10-year investigation into all the juicy details. And so, okay, we've got that down. Now, the funeral, some of the things, we want to talk about some of the things with the funeral. Well, first, him leaving. We might jump around because there's just so much information, and it's just all very interesting. But there's footage, and this is the only time that I've really been wishing we videoed so we could actually show some of these clips. Yeah. But you can find this documentary, and we will link it under our High Level Hairesy tab.
The ones that we've spoken about today, we'll link all of them today.
So there is footage of the sheriff, like it's like a rescue like helicopter. It's not even like a medic.
A medevac or an ambulance, a helicopter ambulance.
Yeah, it was like a sheriff helicopter. And you see footage zoomed in, and the body that is laying on the gurney in the white sheet moves and gets up. And then, I mean, that's just an interesting tidbit.
The coroner van video, which
that one is hard to say.
That one's hard to say because it was according to the official story, it was a German media experiment that showed, basically it was like a coroner van pulling up into this parking garage, and then you see a dude get out, that is there's a guy that gets out of the van, and then he opens the back door of the coroner's van, and somebody gets out, and he kind of tries to cover him and walks him. It looks like it could be Michael.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to say that that is real or not, because according to the official story, it was a German media experiment to show, that it's been debunked as fake. But
yeah, so I wasn't even going to mention that one.
yeah, but you're going to come across that if any of you guys
there's
ever go
also
look into
things
any of
out
this
there
stuff.
to make you believe that something is fake when it's not.
It's like controlled opposition.
Yes, controlled opposition. But then there was Jermaine's airport slip when he was in an interview with a woman, a journalist, and he's talking about, what happened. And Jermaine says, Michael was not with us way before we got to the airport. And she says, airport? And he goes, I mean, hospital. And when you've been doing a lot of interviews, sure, you can have some slip ups, but that's kind of an interesting slip up, because not only that, there was at the LAX, they had closed
all of the flights except for one.
And in the log, every flight said on time, on time, on time.
No, it said landed.
They
all
said on time.
On time or landed. I guess maybe it was one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was one private jet flight that said unknown. And the staff were told to ignore the plane. And this was following his death. And then, Jermaine talks about, he was gone way before we got to the airport. So, okay, another little interesting
weird little slip up by his own brother.
So then at the funeral,
let's talk about their reactions.
Yeah, the family's reactions. There's clips of Joe Jackson, his father, at the funeral, giving a thumbs up to the camera. Also, it was private. It was like a studio set, and that could be said, well, you just don't want all the media to be around, but there was specific media allowed to be there to get footage.
It could have been like where that's the actual funeral, and then then you had the big memorial at the Staples Center, which is where, the media and everybody was allowed. But who knows? It could be that, or it could be that, they staged some of it.
So the family, all of the family, there is clips of the entire family including his children. Joe laughing and giving a thumbs up. His sister was smiling. The kids are smiling. Like his son, Prince, is like popping bubble gum, and they just seem to be relaxed and not really grieving. And when you're a child and you lose your parent, you're not just going to be happy-go-lucky and relaxed and just
at your dad's funeral.
And then there's clips of Macaulay Culkin
and Mila Kunis
smiling at each other. And Macaulay Culkin met him when he was 9. So they were close friends and they maintained relationship. And then he's just sitting there kind of smiling. And then Elizabeth Taylor, also
very close with Michael.
Jackson had known her since the 80s. They had a very close. She also strongly defended him during all of his allegations, and she was there smiling. And so that was very interesting. Paris Jackson, she kept messing with like an earpiece.
I think that was at the
memorial.
That was at the memorial at Staples Center.
Okay. And maybe, yes. And I think actually, so this is funeral and or memorial, and we can get like more specific. But
everything she's talking about with all the people and they're happy that was all at the funeral. Like the one that seemed like it was a staged kind of thing, that was all at the funeral. But then Paris got up on the mic at the memorial at the Staples Center with all of Michael's brothers and sisters and family standing around her. She kept messing with her ear.
And there was a couple points where like a family member would whisper in her ear, and then she kept, messing with her ear. And it was kind of clear she had an earpiece and was being
being told what to say.
And then it is said that we can't prove it, and that his children just a couple months before had taken acting lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know, but it makes sense. And then, okay, I think it wasn't it at the memorial that Jermaine sang Smile, the song Smile Though Your Heart Is Aching.
Mm-hmm.
And so the original lyrics say, light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness. But at the memorial, he changed the lyrics. Sure, you can blame it on any number of things. It's an easy slip up.
But that's a very specific
it's a very
slip up.
And when you're practicing a song and memorizing the lyrics,
and
so
it's in memoriam of Michael
your brother,
Jackson.
He sings, light up your face with sadness, hide every trace of gladness.
So he switched gladness and sadness.
So, I mean, that's a very interesting, and as we said, nothing was done with Michael by accident. And there were layers upon layers of his stories. And
also, Paris, real quick, something I just remembered. If your your parent had just died, not only would you not be happy and you would be very, very distraught, she didn't look like she was really, she didn't even have tears on her face.
Yeah, there were no tears.
It looked like when a child is faking crying. It looked like, and I'm not judging her. I'm not, if we're wrong, I'm not judging her. I'm not judging the way somebody grieves or anything like that. But I'm just telling you the way that it looked, that she looked like she had been told to do this, that I didn't see one tear on her face. And then immediately she like turns and like puts her face into either LaToya or Janet's, she hugs her. And so something I just thought.
Yeah. So then Zach had brought up the Liberian girl at the end of the memorial. So at the end of that music video, Liberian Girl, when Michael Jackson, he is at he's behind the camera, he's directing the whole thing.
There's
and
a bunch of movie stars in that music video. He's got all these actors in the music video.
He says, that's a wrap. And at the end of that. So then at the end of the memorial, there is a picture of him from that music video, that very scene where he says, that's a wrap. And also just another like interesting layer.
I think all of the imagery they used at not just that picture, all of the imagery that was up on the screen at the memorial was all stuff from that music video specifically.
Oh, and then, okay, so his memorial was held at the Staples Center. And right before his memorial started, herd of elephants came through, which they're from is that the Barnum and Bailey Circus? The Barnum and Bailey Circus. But it just so happened that they had their little tags on their foreheads, their little headwear that they had on that said the greatest show on earth. And I mean, I don't know.
That could be coincidence, but like,
I don't believe in coincidences, but
no, we definitely don't. But I just think it's very odd that like, okay, I can understand the grandeur of Michael Jackson and having like a herd of elephants all, parading in front of the Staples Center and all that. I get that. And that makes sense. But this was not a Barnum and Bailey show. This was not a circus. Why would they leave the headdress on these elephants that say the greatest show on earth? I understand that's the tagline for Barnum and Bailey, the circus.
Mm-hmm.
But this had nothing to do with Barnum and Bailey. Why did you leave those on them? They weren't being utilized. They are controlled other ways. These headdresses were solely for cosmetic purposes. Mm-hmm. So why would they leave the greatest show on earth on there?
Mm-hmm. The death certificate. So
that one's to me, that's a damning part of this.
So on all of, and you can look this up, on all of MJ's documents, like his driver's license, things like that, his identification, all of them say Michael Joe Jackson. And you would have to have proof of what your name is to be able to get like a driver's. Now, somebody like that, he could get fake driver's license, I'm sure, but could you also not get a fake death certificate? And his death certificate says Michael Joseph Jackson. And that's just, I mean, come on. Some of these things, like, they're starting to add up. And then when you talk about his friend and his director of This Is It, Kenny Ortega,
Mm-hmm.
he slips, and at the memorial or the funeral, I think it's a memorial, and he's speaking and he says, we were here just less than a week ago and MJ was with us, but it had actually been like 2.5 weeks.
2 or 2.5 weeks.
That he had since passed. And then there was a scene, there's footage where Marlon and Randy Jackson are in a car and they're laughing, kind of relaxed. And this was on 6/27, 2 days after Michael passed, and they're just kind of shooting the shit. And then you see this dark figure in the back seat, and their windows are down. The front 2 windows are down, and they're laughing and waving and talking to the cameras. And then you see this like dark shaded figure in the back seat with the windows rolled up. And it's just like, who was that? Who didn't want to be seen?
And the post on Paris's Instagram, I believe, her social media, that kind of shows when she's talking about her dad, about Michael, and then it looks like, it's not official, but it looks, when you pause that video or when you look at that frame, it looks like it could be Michael sitting in the back seat of the car that she's sitting in.
Mm-hmm. And then at the funeral, they zoom in and there is a guest, and it's a white lady. And they zoom in, and when you see the profile, like they match it. When you see the profile of Michael and the profile of this white lady, and then you notice that there is an Adam's apple on this white lady. And then you notice that one of his sisters makes eye contact with said white lady. Because I don't know her name, and I'm just giving a descriptor. That's all. Okay, so there's just a lot of things with his surrounding his funeral, his memorial, and then okay, let's talk about some of the evidence. I won't say proof, but evidence that he is alive and well, but hiding. And but first, I'm going to read. So the album Xscape, this is why we also entitled Did Michael Xscape, because of his album, and what Xscape actually means when you break it down. And so the lyrics say, escape, escape, escape. Everywhere I turn, no matter where I look, the system is in control. It's all ran by the book. I've got to get away so I can clear my mind. Escape is what I need, away from electric eyes. No matter where I am, I see my face around. They pin lies on my name and push them from town to town. Don't have a place to run, but there's no need to hide. I've got to find a place, but I won't hide away. Escape, got to get away from the system loose in the world today. Escape the pressure that I face from relationships, got to go away. Escape the man with the pen that writes the lies that hassle this man. Escape, I do what I wanna because I gotta face nobody but me. Escape. And then at the end of the song, he says, escape the pressure that I face, got to go away, can't take it no more. Escape the man with the pen, I can't take this no more. Escape, I do what I wanna because I gotta face nobody but me. Escape, escape. Ugh, I mean, come on. If that's not just blatant in your face, hiding under plain sight, and then you pin that with what he mentioned back in the rabbi interviews, talking about disappearing, and then you put on his master of disguise. So we're starting to get quite a culmination of evidence that kind of points in that direction and could be just wishful thinking on our part. But as I've mentioned before, I feel when something is truth, then usually Zach finds the evidence one way or another. And I just feel it in my heart that this is truth. And then when you do look, like, it's just kind of impossible with as many players that are involved that there's not bound to be some slip ups. For instance, when Jermaine, they're at the This Is It premiere.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this is it. I mean, okay. And then Jermaine says, I have to think maybe he was, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to put anything on him that's not true, but like, why would you say, he says, this is not really it. There's more going on. This is not the final curtain call. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's some of what he said. And
on
he's
camera.
On camera. They're, the media, the paparazzi are questioning. It's like on the red carpet. And he says this, and maybe he figures nobody's paying attention, but like, he's like, there's more. And then at the end of the This Is It documentary, which, don't you think it's also very interesting that they recorded the whole thing to create a documentary so you could actually see? He didn't get to do the This Is It tour because of his passing. Then there's this beautiful documentary that showcases who he was as an individual and showcases what the show was going to be, the tour. And then that comes out, after the fact. And at the end of the This Is It documentary, Michael does sign language that says, there is more. I will reveal myself. And just saying that out loud, I'm like, please reveal yourself. So some of his disguises, and like Dave. Oh, before we get into that, I forgot the Five Alive. So Five Alive is a beverage.
Oh, the commercial.
The commercial. So there's a commercial. Do you remember where that aired?
It wasn't in the United States. It was a different country.
Yeah, it was a different country that this commercial aired, but it didn't matter because he had fans everywhere. So this dodo bird, that was the mascot for this drink. This dodo bird pops out of the ground, okay, and shouting, "I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive," and starts doing the moonwalk. Fun fact, Michael Jackson's nickname was Dodo Bird, with family, I believe. That was brought out. Oh, and this commercial aired in February of 2010. So not even a year after his passing.
It was introduced in the United States originally, but then by the 90s, they were no longer produced for the U.S. market. So just to clear that up.
Okay, so we're talking about when this commercial aired and
right.
where. And so it didn't air in the U.S. So if nobody saw this commercial, it didn't air in the U.S. And so that's just another, I mean, come on. I'm alive. Five Alive, Jackson 5. And it's a dodo bird. And his nickname
was Dodo.
And then doing the moonwalk, like, and dancing and singing I'm Alive. I mean, it just seems like something he would do or be in agreement with.
Right.
Okay, so Dave.
That one, to me, out of all of his disguises, that one was, again, one of the most damning ones because he showed up in an interview with, was it Larry King? I think it was
yeah.
Larry King. This is on TV. You can find this footage online. And go ahead. Sorry.
No. So Dave he had been set on fire as a child and had a lot of scarring and
a lot,
I guess, disfigurement and had to have a lot of reconstructive surgeries.
Which
and
Michael paid for.
Michael paid for with his heart for those in need and for children. And his heart went out to him, and they became good friends. And so in this documentary, they hold the actual Dave in an interview, and then the Michael Jackson Dave, and doing the Larry King interview. And you can tell the difference in the voice. You can tell that the scarification is not exactly the same. There is more on the actual Dave than in the interview with that we believe is Michael Jackson. They show an interview with actual MJ, and then the interview with MJ as Dave, and the head cock is the same, like the head tilt and the inflection of the voice. It's a higher voice than what the actual Dave has.
His eyes,
you can tell his eyes are definitely not the same. You can tell they're MJ's eyes. And they were good friends. So wouldn't it, I mean, that's a very easy
if Michael asked
disguise.
And if Michael came to him and said, this is what I'm planning on doing, don't you think somebody like that he helped, that he's been close friends with for so long and helped with all of his surgeries and everything, don't you think he would be most likely to agree to something like that?
Agree to let him use his identity and just for an interview.
And who better to use as a disguise than somebody who already had a disfigured face? It makes it that much easier to utilize that as a disguise because of all the different scarification on his face and everything. It makes it that much easier to use that as a disguise.
Mm. So that was, and then, I mean, what a ballsy move to
go on national television.
And you can tell there's some nervous glances at the camera. Yep. And like, there's a little, you can tell there is
Michael was nervous.
Yeah. Some slight, just like making sure that, I don't know. He just, we'll leave it at nervous.
He knew the gravity of this. Yeah. That if anybody found out, like not only there would be legal consequences for that as well.
So then later there's an Akon interview, and Akon
was also good friends with Michael.
They did a song together, and he mentions how he kept referring to Dave as Mike. And he speaks about that in an interview. So like, why would that correlation be there? You know, if he didn't know that he was dressed up or disguised as him. Then we talked about the heavyset white man that was a mayor in his, I believe it was Ghost music video. And there's footage at MJ's nephew's wedding of that same character, that same disguise at his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another music video with a female that's dancing like Michael. I can't remember what that one is. But again, the same character in the background behind the scenes in that music video. Let's see. Okay, so then one of the biggest ones.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Jack
okay.
Crooner.
His name is Jack Crooner. I mean, do you need anything else? Michael Jackson Crooner. Do you know what a crooner is? It's a singer, that's what another word for a singer. And so his name being Jack Crooner, it's almost, again, hidden in plain sight if you're paying attention.
And if you just Google Jack Crooner, look at him, he looks like somebody that's wearing a mask.
Oh, and okay, quickly going back to after the death as well. There was a lot of information from employees on the grounds. There was a home that was like in the woods. There was licensing to have exotic animals.
And this was in Ontario, I think.
And they said, I've never met. His name was they called him Mr. Pontifex. And I was curious. I always look up word meanings and name meanings. And Pontifex means bridge builder. And it often meant like the bridge between the people and God. Oh, and so this,
like the pontiff, when you talk about the Catholic Church, that's another name for the Pope, is the pontiff.
So Mr. Pontifex, and Mr. Pontifex had exotic animals, which if you know Michael, I don't know if he owned the tiger that he had on his album cover, but
no, but he had a pet monkey that he taught sign language.
He loved animals as well. And so there were packages being delivered that were special effects companies and makeup. So, there's another, you're getting packages for all these special effects companies, and most likely, here we're speculating, but containing, prosthetics. And
this guy also had a lot of security as well.
Tons
Why
of
would
security.
some random dude nobody's ever heard of have that amount of security?
Mm-hmm. And there was more linking to, to all that, but it was just very interesting. That's in the documentary. And like I said, maybe a little scattered because there's just so many things that's like, this. So going back to Jack Crooner, he had a friend that was a famous accent teacher, and you can find him on YouTube. He teaches how to speak with a German accent, how to speak with a New York accent. And he never left MJ's side, or I'm sorry, Jack Crooner's side. He was always with him. Jack speaks with an accent. It's also believed there's technology that's like a tooth microphone.
It's a voice changer technology.
A voice changer technology, yes.
Which absolutely exists. If you know the kind of, if any of you have ever deep dove into like what the CIA has, the capabilities with like just the masks, from straight out of Mission Impossible, like straight out of a Mission Impossible movie, that kind of stuff actually exists. You can look all of that up. So yes, voice changer technology that is utilized so that he doesn't have that, typical high pitched Michael voice.
So there's a lot of pictures with this gentleman, at a yacht party, and every single picture that a yacht party with his family, his kids, and they're always hanging around with, this guy's always hanging around with his kids and the family. They're at this yacht party. Everyone's in like summer wear because it's hot, and he's in full like long sleeves and
like
always
suit and tie,
something
basically
around his neck. He always has his neck covered. So Michael had a charity called Heal the World for children, and Jack Crooner started a charity called Heal the Earth for children, doing the exact same things. And if you remember in The Rabbi, he said,
yeah, I would like to in some kind of way disappear where people don't see me anymore at some point and just do my thing for children, but not be visual.
And that sounds kind of like what Jack Crooner might be doing. There is a picture of Jack by MJ's star on the Walk of Fame.
There's a little video clip of a performance, and you can hear Michael talking in the background.
You hear his laugh.
And there's in this, somebody like basically showed a comparison like side by side of his laugh, the pitch of his voice, and everything. So basically Michael was in the background of this show, this little performance. I don't remember, was it Jack Crooner that was performing, or I don't know, it was somebody performing, but Michael was involved.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear in the background, I don't know if he's backstage or what, multiple times him laughing, and then also just kind of talking at a couple points. It is unmistakably Michael's voice.
And, Michael always had future aspirations to become director. He wanted freedom. He wanted privacy. And what better way to, so Jack Crooner he's a director, and there's like, he's able to be around his children and able to be on video. And if you look him up, like Zach said, you look at these pictures, you can kind of tell if you're looking hard enough, like it looks like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah, like you can tell there's just something slightly off, that it looks like somebody that's wearing a mask of some sort.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just if you think about all those things, we didn't mention the comic book. You know, Michael Jackson wanted to buy Marvel Comics from Stan Lee, and that didn't end up happening. But Michael wrote authored a comic book called The Fated, and it was about a famous rock star, a famous pop star that tried to commit suicide, and he didn't die and ended up having superpowers. That was supposed to be, there's some things that say it never got published, and there's some things that say it did get published in 2010. But then, and his name was Gabriel, and Gabriel was a messenger of God. And if you hear some of MJ's videos speaking, he believed he was a messenger to bring forth peace and positivity and to get people to think. And so to use Gabriel as the hero, I guess, of this protagonist. And his name's Gabriel Starr. And he becomes even more popular after his attempt at death and becomes like almost supernatural. So, and then I looked for it because I would pay for that. But it's to be found nowhere. I mean, you can
find the cover of the book when you search for it.
Which that's very interesting too, because you can tell it's like his hand with his.
It's the silhouette of his hand, but you find the cover, but you can't find the actual book like anywhere.
So, okay. I guess this is, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think this was all just rapid fire, like all these different things. And like we said, if you go to our website and we will link these various different documentaries that we're referring to, because they are very good documentaries. Because let's be honest, any kind of documentary that shows up on like mainstream, like Netflix or whatever, like, they're not going to have this kind of information. So that's why we're talking about these documentaries that are maybe, with like Sean Hibbler. Like, not everybody's heard of him, but he's a wonderful director, a wonderful producer that is a documentarian. This is what he does for a living.
The digging.
He does the digging, and you can tell. So I don't think I have anything else much more to say, because
at the beginning of the documentary, on the Believe channel, Jackson Alive in 2025, he has a disclaimer where he says there's even some information that had to be left out because he was getting threatening calls to stop what he was doing.
Yeah.
Through the 10 years that he was putting this together.
So there were things that he was not able to put in there. His channel was getting threatened to be shut down. He was getting personal threats. So, I mean, there's even more information that maybe we aren't even aware of at this point either.
And this is it's been for fun because of our love for MJ and just what he was trying to do. He was trying to raise the vibe of the planet. Like I said, with lyrics like heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. And that's what we're here to try to do, is raise the vibe of the planet and the consciousness, and just put out, as much good as we can and be the change. And man in the mirror, he specifically says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways No message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. And that's what he was singing about. And that's what he was trying to get out. And they didn't like it. And he mentioned multiple times about having to Xscape. So just to give you a little, as our whole thing is, question everything. Without the question, how can you have the answer? And it doesn't mean that it changes your world or changes your life. It's just information to continue to help you realize not everything is always as it seems, and just to play attention. So as always, this episode has been brought to you by High Level Design Salon and Barbershop. You can check out highlevel444.com for booking information. Also, as a special thing, we have recently launched our t-shirt shop, High Level T-shirts, which is on also highlevel444.com. Under that tab, you'll see the shop. And we have a special t-shirt with Michael on it that says, I believe. If you believe. It's just fun to wear. It's conversation starting, thought-provoking, and helps support our show so we can continue asking the questions and bringing you some answers, some opinions, and helping raising the vibe. And because you are so special to us, yes, we are offering a discount, 15% off on the Michael Jackson shirt since you listened to this episode. And that coupon code that you can enter at checkout is HLH15, HLH15, and that'll get you 15% off that shirt.
And to wrap all of this up, we have a short clip of Michael speaking that we want you to hear.
Learning about God, Jesus, love. Jesus said, bring on the children, imitate children, be like little children, and to take care of others, take care of old people. When I see children, I see the face of God. That's why I love them so much. That's what I see. I love to do things for children, and I try to imitate Jesus. And I'm not saying I am Jesus. I'm not saying...
Yeah, we're clear on that.
Right, I'm trying to imitate Jesus in the fact that he said to be like children, to love children, to be as pure as children are. And to make yourselves as innocent and see the world through eyes of wonderment and the whole magical quality of it all. And I love that. And we were raised with those values. Those are very important values. And my family and I, we were raised with those values, and they continue strong in us today.
Until next time,
we leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator.
May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
High Level Hairesy.